Hello and welcome to Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lauren Zayu. Join me as we navigate the political communications, ups and downs, and ins and outs of our day. We're talking to leading experts on the issues that help our country move forward for the better. My guests and I promise to give you the history, the real, and the ideal. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lauren Zayu. This summer, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, held the largest gathering of poor and low-wealth people in the nation's history at the Mass Poor People's and Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington to the polls. While gearing up for this major event, we got the chance to talk to Zillah Wesley about organizing in D.C. Zillah Wesley is a native Washingtonian. She loves working in the DC community and towards the beloved community. Zillah earned her bachelor's in political science from the University of the District of Columbia. And at this time, she was working with the Kairos Center as a policy organizer. She's worked with the DC Poor People's Campaign and other collectives in the DC community. She was raised in People's Congregational United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. Growing up in the UCC helped her become the person she is today and gave her the fire for social justice. She loves DC and would like to see all people enjoy it. Zillah is about the liberation of people by transformative and healing organizing. I'm excited to welcome to Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered, Zillah Wesley.
Hey, Lauren. Thank you for having me. Hey, girl.
Hey, Zillah. Thank you for being here. If we just want to get started with a bit about your background and how you got here today.
Perfect. Oh my God. So I never considered myself an organizer probably until a few years ago because I was all over the place just with life. I was raised middle class DC, I had a cotillion, everything. So my life goal wasn't to be in the streets, or how my life was set up wasn't necessarily where I am now. But I always loved to help people. I was a Girl Scout, but the examples from my family were always helping community. So that's really one way I got there, because my grandmother is a good example of that. Well, both grandmothers, they would just really help out people in the community by either watching people's children or my grandmother did hair, so she would do hair, and then somebody else would do her laundry. So just to do that bartering system from just the understanding of people in the deeper South, but DC's still the South, as much as people don't want to think it is, but we're under the Mason-Dixon line. So that's that. And then I went through school for a little bit. I went to Old Dominion for a while when I first graduated. And then I came back up here and but then when I was in Old Dominion, that was some pivotal time too, because I really helped people register to vote. I was part of Virginia Young Democrats for a while. I, really learned a lot, but then I came home because it was just time to come home, and it was good timing because my grandmother was transitioning to the next world. So just really helping with that is always, was very positive for me, and just also got to see the medical system in its entirety, about how, Medicaid and social workers and how people get treated at certain places at certain price points. With that, that was a pivotal moment for me where I'm just experience life, because you never know, right? And so then I just worked odd jobs here and there, because at that time I really wanted to be a teacher. So then I worked for an after-school enrichment program, and that was also another way where I saw no matter how hard teachers work, the system is flawed, and the aftercare system is equally as flawed sometimes too. And sometimes, and parents need help. Parents are struggling. They might not say that, but they are, because they're trying to do the best of what they can do.
Amen.
Because even I know I had to do I did a lot of advocacy work, and even talking with parents and sitting in meetings with parents about the the curriculum that their child's getting, and if is this right or wrong. And also at that same time, when I was working at a charter at the after school program, I was on the board of directors for the YWCA.
Okay.
For like a while, because it started, they were looking for women under 25. So I was their token under 25 person.
That's
And
okay.
that, yeah, it was like two of us for a while. One was like, it was like me, like young Black woman, and another woman, Hannah. And so like we really worked it out, and like we got some great opportunities. I got to travel with that and represent the United States in Thailand for a conference. I was even on the planning team for a conference in Barbados, which was really dope. We had women from like all over the Caribbean, Canada, and the United States, and parts of Mexico, and we really did that and really came and worked. Let's see. But with that really gave me tools that I now use a lot in my organizing, because, you know, to sometimes be an organizer in the way that like I've been trained up is to really be community based, to help with transformation and not be transactional. So all that experience really helped me. And so in winter 2017, I started volunteering with the Poor People's Campaign, kind of, with Erica and Clinton. And we were rocking it out, doing flyers, like they were doing panels. So I was helping support. I was on the DC committee as just a steering committee, just as a member, and moved from there. Because that's also one thing I'm really passionate about, is the DC community and really having it equitable for everyone who lives here, and like comfortable too. And then I worked as a help with the DMV mobilization in 2020 before the pandemic happened.
Right.
And then moved to Kairos, and now I'm here.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to get into your work at Kairos here a little later. But just to sort of give people an overview, right? Like, organizing is kind of a buzzword. It means a lot of different things, a lot of spaces. But like, what does your day-to-day look like as an organizer in DC?
Well, it's not a regular 9 to 5. Like, that's what I just tell people, like off break. Because like people who, you know, we're trying to transform this city with, you know, they work late or they work early. So sometimes I get texts at 2 a.m. about something. Like, I'm sometimes on calls at like 7 a.m. with people, you know, asked to like, you know, I've been asked to like, can you help with like a mutual aid, or can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? Because like showing up in an intentional way means that you have to show up, just not like speaking at my event and I'll come speak at your event, but you come to like my smaller like spoken word or like food pantry, or can you donate this, or like, do you have a little bit of money that can help me, or can you pick up some groceries for the seniors at my building? So like stuff like that. Or can you like make this call because we need somebody to listen as, you know, people are speaking, you know? So that's it. The day to day, every day is a different day. I will just safely say that. But I love it because I love connecting with people. So, and sometimes people just want to be listened to and have their stories told, and just really just have people listen to them at the end of the day. So it's like, I do a lot of listening. I do a lot of like, you know, just making people feel empowered and feel that like they're not taking crazy pills. Like, this system is jacked up. And like, you know, in DC, to really like afford anywhere here, you have to be making over $31 an hour, you know? So, you know, go to poorpeoplescampaign.com and look at DC's fact sheet, you know, to really like understand some of the breakdowns of that. And like, the reality is people are getting $15 an hour. That's cool, but that's not enough to really still make it.
In that model, even at $15 an hour, you would need 2 full-time jobs in order to afford an apartment. And like, that's just the rent, right? Before we get into the cost of groceries and, you know, transportation and all the other things.
Utilities,
they're-
lights,
right, they're required to actually live. And so I definitely understand that. And as we transition into Hold Up, right, which is sort of where we get into things that people might not know about your work, I'm curious in particular if there are any misconceptions about organizing or something that you think people should know.
Yeah, I think organizing is not a it's not just like being behind your computer and or in the streets, right? It's a mix of both. Because like with this new future, digital organizing is a real reality. And there's still the digital divide that's happening in this country, in this city, and a lot of places. Because like, yes, we have this luxury to like, I can be in my room all day on emails, and the people that we are, we're trying to activate are at work, doing like second shift, doing first, second, and third shift, even, or at their other job or somewhere else. So the reality is we still got to be both places and really meet people where they are. Also, to me, it's not like an ego thing. It's not a title thing, because it's really like if you're genuine, people will show up for you. And that's sometimes a challenge. And it's like it's not like a lifestyle choice, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like I wear like Birkenstocks and like something like that doesn't make me an organizer, like what makes you an organizer? Like I was trying to think of something like, because it's like a lot of people think it's like, because how like Pinterest has like those outfits of like, it's like one of those things. People think like if you look a certain way, you're an organizer. Like a lot of people are like, and also find balance, because a lot of people will live and breathe this and just focus and be so honed on like this that they're missing a lot of stuff. They're missing how they're treating themselves. They're missing how they're treating other people. And like, you need to integrate this in your life in a healthy way, because sometimes people get into organizing because they're hurt or they were hurt on some type of level. And they haven't done their healing work or their light work, and hurt people without even sometimes knowing that they're hurting. So,
absolutely. That's very much a misconception. And I think your notion of like, one, organizing is not 9 to 5, because often, again, the Poor People's Campaign is organizing in particular are at work. And so like you're working during working hours, but also outside of working hours in an effort to organize people. Because most people won't let you organize on the clock, because why would they do that? And on top of that, I think that there is this, it's something that I've been thinking about since President Obama, actually, like because he started out as a community organizer. I think people get this notion that there's this like glamorous side to organizing, or that it's a stepping stone to getting into politics. And it's not. It's not either of those things. Organizing is important. It's intentional, and like having long-term relationships with communities is not something to ever be taken for granted. And so part of, all of this, particularly with the Poor People's Campaign model of like people organizing their own communities, like a lot of time political organizing looks like people parachuting into a place 8 months before an election, not knowing anything about the spot, but showing up to save people, right? And you're going to show up and you're going to vote blue and rah, hey, hey. And then the person is gone by December and never comes back again until 4 years later when they show up to do it again, right? And so it's not sustainable. People don't trust it. People are skeptical because this is a relationship where you have shown up, professed to care about me until you got what you needed from me and left. And that's not organizing either. And that's why I think we're not seeing sustained change in a lot of places. One of the many reasons why we're not seeing sustained change in a lot of places, because people aren't actively like rooted in communities that they're invested in. You're just sending people out with a clipboard and a gas card to organize some state in Middle America.
Right. I mean, and you said it, and then with that, it's the disconnect of even sometimes people not understanding the conditions that you're walking into, right?
Absolutely.
Because like that's why also a part of organizing that people don't really do is study. Like study super important. Like reading for yourself, like reading to read up on like the conditions of the area you're in, like understanding even also political security. All of that wraps up because like the stuff that we are doing is like serious, because like uniting the bottom and like trying to have like and trying to break down some of the systematic racism and like activate people to understand like, you know, everything that's happening and taking blinders off is like a real thing and really like a scary thing for some powers that be. So it's like having the understanding of like political security and safety and knowing who you are, because that's why when like being authentic is the best you can do and people can tell. Yeah, but you just said it correctly, because that and that's a challenge in DC. It happens in DC all the time. People will parachute in, you know, stay here, and then there's people that are left behind to pick up the pieces, and you know, and sometimes the pieces just don't get picked up because people are numb to it, and just not sad. Well, I mean, it makes me sad about like some situations like about that, because it's like you could have really used this as a true mobile like building base,
right,
and really getting people to rock out with you in like a genuine way instead of a celebrity type of way or worship type of way.
And organizing is bigger than just the rally,
right?
People, and so people like, you don't get me wrong, like movements and events where people can express themselves, programs where we speak truth to power are very important and critical. At the same time, organizing work, organizing people in an effort to shift power structures is so much more than that. And so a lot of the work that the Poor People's Campaign is organizing around, or the issues we're organizing around, you know, like there's the minimum wage, there's the child tax credit, there's like all these different policies that also influence our organizing work. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. You're in particular a policy organizer with the Kairos Center. And I want to talk about how you marry the two of those, policy and organizing.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because like that goes with like research and study. So like we're really good at like taking some policy and really breaking it down and really talking to people about it. Because sometimes policy is a scary thing. Because in most of my conversations, I have brought up paid family leave and how like people should apply for it. And here's how to apply for it. You know, I even send people the website, even how, and use examples that like people like tag words that people hear, like, you know, that child, oh, if I could talk, the child tax credit was really helpful for a lot of people. And they were like, yeah, it was. And then like, I break that down to them on like how, you know, there's enough money for us to like keep it all the time, you know? And they're like, true. And then like, how do you go about it? I'm just like, you know, here's the Poor People's Campaign website. This is some of the stuff we're talking about, you know, even when it comes to statehood and all of that is like, because that's one thing that that's in the principles of the Poor People's Campaign is statehood for DC. And so like, you know, even bringing that up and they're just like, cool. And then even just trying to help people imagine what that would look like. Right. And, you know, all of that is just like taking like, because like sometimes to me, policy seems like scary for people, and people sometimes shut down when it comes to government because people are like floating heads and just like talking so much. Because like yet again, Obama, that's what he was so brilliant as an organizer / politician, is like he broke it down to people to understand, because that's technically like organizing 101 is meet people where they are, you know, because like a lot of people just like to use big words and like all of that. But the reality is, like, not everyone is gonna like want to use the word with like wherewithal and like make sure you're using amongst or among you the right way, you know? And it's just like sometimes you just want to sit down and kick it with somebody and be like, you know what? You should, you know why you should vote? So we can all do our Build Back Better shit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like you just really gotta like get down with the people. Cause like, but like also be your authentic self. Like, because if you are not like
You're not actually, because that's a lot
yeah,
of people pretend, particularly if we can be honest, in urban communities, right? Like show up and you sound ridiculous, you look ridiculous, attempting to like relate to people, and that's just not the way to do anything, because people can feel authenticity, they can feel it a mile away. And so even if like I don't agree with you all the way, but I know you're being authentic and honest with me, that goes further with me than someone who's saying everything, that I like, but I don't know if I can believe them because I don't know if you're being genuine.
oh yeah, because just like the people who yeah, because some of the New York who just be like just be using hand stuff because they're in like urban areas, and I'm like, no, stop it, Susan. Okay, please. Like you're doing the most, but yet the least, and you're turning people off. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, because you can see when people start shutting down, and then like I get like quiet phone calls and be like, "What the fuck was that?" You're just like, you know,
you're like, I don't know either. If I can be honest,
right?
I don't know either.
Yeah,
No,
it gets
very
real here, but yeah, but it's also, but it's a way where, and I don't know who says this. It's either like Reverend Theo Harris or Bishop Barber, but it's like we need to make mini Martins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a good organizer at the end of the day should help people feel empowered and honor their story and honor them and trust them enough that like if I give you this paperwork, I know that you can organize your house or your church or your whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that I need to set you up for success.
Yes. Setting people up for success is absolutely pivotal. And actually, as we transition into I ain't sorry, right? Like, what are some of the mantras that you developed as a person, either personally or professionally, that help you do the work that you do?
That this is not about me. This is for the greater good. I can safely say I have changed that a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
as in it's about all of us, including myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if in a way, I'm also like breaking down the community because if, and yet again, I mean, it goes back to my earlier point. If we are all like jacked up and trying to heal a community or help heal a community or being with or be in community with a community that's trying to heal, and you have your own issues that you're not trying to work out at all, that's not okay. Also, don't be perfect and I don't know all the answers. That's another mantra, because like, and just show up as your authentic self. Everybody rises is another one, and then there's always another chance to
grow. Say more about that. There is always another chance to grow.
Yeah, because like some people come with the mindset that it needs to be perfect or needs to be a certain way. The reality is like it's different chance. Like you can grow whatever way you need to grow, you know, because it's like trees. Some trees grow in the shade. Some trees really need the sun. However, they're still growing. And so like if I, miscommunicate something, go back and apologize, and that's okay, instead of just like not doing that. Or if I hurt somebody's feelings or came in a little bit too rah, talk to them about it so I don't leave any wounds, and just say like throw somebody off with that. So like that's really what I mean by that, because it's always another chance, because as long as you're breathing and you're here on this earth, that. And I guess the classic is you only get what you're organized to take. And
yes.
that is the OG classic one. And that's what I believe. And, you know, and there's a difference. I mean, and then you got and then also knowing your team, because you really give parts of yourself to everybody, but not everyone needs to have parts of yourself. I know that sounds really
okay.
I just talked out of both sides of my mouth. But but it goes to like the authenticity is like you show up for who you are.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to know that sometimes people aren't going to show up for you in the same way that you're showing up for them. But you got to honor yourself in that, like, I'm going to show up for them because I'm here. This is in me. This is how my calling in life and my pathway. And I feel like the universe put me here for that. So those are really some of the mantras I do, because it's like, and really boundaries. And I mean that for yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to like get caught up in this work. Because the other day I was out and I was like, oh shit, I forgot to eat. And
yeah.
Like, oh, that's very problematic. And it's just like, you can't do that because, you know, your body gets sore, your body gets tired from all this marching. I mean, we were in the trenches together.
And it's so interesting. A couple of things. One, I want to talk about like the growth that I feel like. So you were talking about like, you know, there's always room to grow. And like even the growth I've felt in the last like year or so with the fusion model that the campaign does, like there are places that I would have been like very uncomfortable to be in, right? I think about us being in like rural West Virginia, right? Or, you know, Montgomery, Alabama, right? Where, you know, the thought is that like those places are unsafe for people who look like us. And I don't mean that to, you know, cast them in a particular light. I'm just saying those are the narratives that are around about them, right? And so it means something for the campaign to organize like in the streets of Harlem, right? In Raleigh, North Carolina, but also in the hills of West Virginia, also in, you know, the rural South, because these problems are continuous and cycled together. And because there are so many areas where they try to divide people, like I think sometimes we don't see those as issues, or we don't see the continuity in what we're all dealing with. Is something I thought about as you were talking. So like that's growth for the organizers, that's growth for, you know, leadership, and particularly on growing leadership, right? You see the leadership looks different in different places, right? So sometimes we're organizing with other organizers, sometimes it's organizing clergy, sometimes it's organizing, you know, shift leaders, sometimes, you know, it's just community leaders who have been there for years and people revere, like. And so understanding that leadership looks different in different parts of the country, but we have to keep all of that in mind when you're looking for people who folks trust, because again, like we can't be everywhere at the same time. And so leaving, you know, the work being understood by the people who are directly impacted is what is going to keep the movement growing. Like 1, 2, you only get what you're organized to take. I think that's so important because I think, ironically, the narrative of this country works the other way. So I see on Twitter a lot, people are always like, whose idea was it for us to work 5 days and only be off 2? Like, who came up with that? And I'm like, well, the issue here is that you don't know labor history, because the issue used to be that you worked 7 days a week. Right. We fought for the weekends. That wasn't like, oh, we all had all our freedom 7 days a week and somebody decided we should work 5 of them, right? Right. And so, you know, we had to organize. So if you want, you know, 3-day weekends or a 4-day work week, which I do support, by the way, I think like you have to organize to take that. It's not that somebody's going to give that to you. It's not that there's a world where you're going to get the entire week off. Like you have to organize, take it, and then continuously defend it. Because as we're seeing now with voting rights, I think people thought after the Voting Rights Act, that this was something that was going to be fine. Like, oh, what do you mean? We won our rights. Well, guess what? They came back for them, as the empire will continue to do across all areas. And so you can't, like, you have to organize, take it, and then be ready to defend it on top of that.
Right. Yeah. Because that's why one thing that I use all the time, and people are just like, what? But I use the Drake quote, like, we're all in the same path, wearing different shoes, and in the same building, we're having different views.
Yeah.
And like, people are just like, what? And I'd be like, the good Scorpio prophet, Drake, because like, but that's right there, because we are all in a place where we need to understand that, like, you gotta hit it in different levels and different things, but really have the wherewithal to have the understanding to know labor history, to understand systematic racism, to understand that this has all been policy has helped with this, because like 1640 was the John Punch case in Virginia, and like that history where it really literally all of them, it was John Punch, who was a indentured servant from off the continent, and two from Scotland. One was from Scotland, one was from Ireland, and they all ran away together. John Punch he had to do servitude to the Commonwealth of Virginia for the rest of his life. The other two only had to serve 20 years and then was freed and got a whole freedom package with like some land and a house and all that. So like that really says to me how stuff is, the divide and conquer is real. And they want to keep us with chaotic energy, because sometimes I feel like it's just very chaotic and like, and siloed, that's why it's like what we fight for, like you said, you said it so perfectly, like we have to like fight for it and continue to fight for it so we can really understand. And it's another one that we say a lot, is so people can stick and stay in a movement. And even doing it in ways where they might not sit, and that goes back to my Drake quote, not like to be here, but like still advocate for people living in poverty in whatever you're doing, because it's a lot of people, 140 million.
140 million.
And they're all not Black people. So
oh no, 140 million people is almost half the country. Like that is a significant number. That is, as far as people who live below the poverty line or one emergency away. That's one flat tire, one medical emergency, one dead car battery, one job loss, one natural disaster. Completely and totally. But also like the work that we do, while we work with people who are somewhat in situations that I think it would be easy to honestly cast them out, there is so much joy and so much community found in so many places where we organize. And on that note, I want to ask you, Zillah, what, if anything, is giving you hope right now?
Just the people who are coming up to me who are like, yeah, I've heard of the Poor People's Campaign, I'm coming. They might not have RSVP'd online, but they're coming. Right. So I mean, and I believe that they're coming, because I don't know why they would even forfeit that information, because I didn't even ask. So like with that said, I do think the word of mouth is key, and like people are bringing their friends who are bringing their friends, and even though I was on a call the other day, and they're like, we're hosting, like a couple was like, we're hosting some people, so it's real. That gives me hope, and just the idea that, like, for myself, living into the future that we want to see, and like, and that starts with within, because that's, probably organizing 102 is self-awareness, and just of self and your surroundings and the conditions, because like people are hungry for something. And you can tell, because even like, I don't know if I should mention this, but like if you even hear the people like during the insurrection, right? Like the people who weren't like trying to shoot up the place, but like they were really saying some of the stuff that we're saying, but they were activated by the wrong people, And so the thing is that we just need to get information out there in a tangible, edible way. And like, and to your point, like that's why I like that we go into West Virginia. And Because even one moment where I was like, wow, is like we were in the lobby of like that hotel. And like somebody came and gave one of us $20 and they were like, can you just give this to the campaign? I love the work y'all do, you know? And even just the people just even reading our shirts and being curious about it. And then even seeing us in our times of joy, because a lot of people fear joy. And just even fear freedom, because that's sometimes our challenge, just and free liberation. And when we are sitting like at dinner after stuff and it's like really like Martin's dream that we think that was just his like one part of his I have a dream speech, where it's like really a fusion movement, and it's like, you know, people of all colors, shapes, sizes, sexual preferences and backgrounds are like here, and we're joking and laughing together, and people just walk by and are just like, interesting, you know? And it's not like necessarily a thing, but it gets their gears moving, and then they read our shirts and they're just like, And you know, I don't know if people are like going at home and like Googling at like what poor people's campaign is afterwards. But it's one of those things where, you know, your interaction with somebody can either make or break their experience with you. And so sometimes our interaction with people really like brings them a snippet of something different than what we're conditioned to do. Because even the fact like Miss Pam is always like, thank you for coming to West Virginia. Well, all of West Virginia's committee is like, thank you for coming to West Virginia. Because like, if you're not feeling seen at all, then you stop trying. Because and also this is another thing I use is like Horton Hears a Who, because that little like flower at the end when it's about to get dipped in oil, and all the Who people who are living on the flower are like, we're here, you know? Like that's one of the things that we are, because it's a lot of people who, you know, keep trying things and switching it up and all of that, and yet aren't being heard. But having like one or two people hear you, and even a whole campaign coming to support you is very powerful and changing for people. And that's what brings me hope.
That is fantastic. I completely agree. Our last segment for the show is called Drunken Love, where we talk about, you know, I give you a couple minutes uninterrupted for any type of closing thoughts or things that you wish you had gotten a chance to talk about earlier. And for this one, we are talking about the Mass Poor Peoples and Low Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington Answer the Polls on June 18th, 2022. Take it away.
Well, I need y'all to just come, you know, just get the homies and everybody tweet about it, Facebook about it, Instagram about it, do a TikTok on your road trip here, you know, to June 18th, because it's going to be a transformative event to me, and it's going to be a stepping stone to what's next, and not just for like the Poor People's Campaign, but for this country, because we're at a moral crossroads that needs to be really honored right now, because we are at a point where no matter who's in office, the people aren't being heard, you know? Because Build Back Better could have helped a lot of people, and that was just a snippet of what we could get, right? Because right now, a lot of us are still fighting for scraps, and so many people have so much, like fucking like Elon Musk bought Twitter for like $44 billion, right?
$44 billion.
A B, and it's like, yo, like we could have done one of that just in the United States, could have just like been powerful, fix potholes, help people turn into solar energy, like get housing for unhoused people, or even just like a drop, like shit, that's like 80,000 drop-in centers. I don't know the math, but it's just
it's a lot. It's a lot, and there is so the equality gap, the wealth gap, it's egregious. It's egregious. It's immoral. to live in a world where there is so much wealth, particularly so much of it made like during a global pandemic when so many people were suffering, and then we're not out of the pandemic, but people are still suffering, and it is frustrating. It is scary to think about. And I think that we are definitely at a crossroads. I completely identify with what you're saying there, because ironically, and keep in mind, like, I'm a political person. Anybody who listens to my show knows that. This is not a political problem. Well, this is a political problem, but it's also a moral problem. Mm-hmm. In that, like, while capitalism definitely has its issues, the sole issue here is greed and lack of compassion and lack of interest in your fellow man and fellow person, and it's not okay, for lack of a better word. And so while people, want to talk about like us transitioning to socialism or communism and all, while I do think there's room for a lot of political perspectives at the table, in the event we do not fix greed, in the event we do not call out greed for what it is, as being sinful, as being evil, as far as like the love of money being the root of all evil, then we are really just like, as you mentioned, like we're changing like politicians, but the people aren't going to be heard regardless.
Yeah. No, because I mean, even because what you just said sparked my mind, because even like how people are like, how some of these churches have fallen off, right? Because it's like, for one hand, you're saying money's evil, and then you're turning around the next second. Some of these churches, you gotta like give your tax stub to see who, like, how much you're really making. But the reality is, like, and that's also what I appreciate about working for Kairos Center and doing work with the Poor People's Campaign, is really the liberation of, the story of Jesus and like his disciples and the other religions as well. Really, and even people who just like are like Wiccans and are into nature, like just hearing the liberation of all of that really shows that like we are in a place where soon we either need to start swimming together and just keep swimming, or we're about to sink together. And that's my thing. And that's why, to me, June 18th is super important to come, because, there is also another election. There's always going to be an election coming up. Presidential election will be soon enough. And no matter who's in office, the people need to say, like the preamble of the Constitution, like I have right here, is like, we the people, you know what I'm saying? Because the white men who made it, owned slaves and did whatever they had to do. But however, you lost your receipt now at this point. So
not lost your receipt.
The people are here, no takesies, backsies,
Right.
So like we're here and figure out how to really make, and I believe we can do it. We just need to break down the silos, and people need to step into love instead of stepping into fear and stepping into like the old ways. Because the reality is, it's like, y'all, we need each other to survive, like that gospel song says.
Yeah, no, that was the first thing I thought of. We need, I need you, you need me. Yeah.
It's we really do.
We need each other. And I think that you put it well. We can either swim together or sink together. But either way, we're actually together. And so you realize,
like, as much people don't want to think that we have, like, a lot of us have more in common than we want to realize. Like, all of us want to just like live and thrive and not just live to survive, right? And also something else she said where I was like, damn, you were spot on, because we're in a place where like these fake barriers are really killing us, like literally. Absolutely. And like June 18th is a way to see fusion, to see a different dream, because like, and even if you read other passages of Martin, like he was kind of alone at this time, because even some of the Black church people left him behind. And all of that. And it's just like, y'all, we need to do better, because but I believe we gonna make it, so we gonna make it. We gonna
Well,
make
and
it.
June 18th is the start of that. So much of the work we've put in, the mobilization tour that we're currently a part of, it's all leading to June 18th as the declaration. Because again, we also know that moving on from that, we're asking people to really organize their communities. This is slated to be the largest gathering of poor and low wealth people that this country has ever seen, and it's happening in the nation's capital. In the event, there's something that you're interested in attending. There's so much information, but start with poorpeoplescampaign.org/June 18th. You can be a mobilizing captain. You can bring your apartment complex. You can bring your community center. You can bring your family. You can come yourself. We've got buses. People are, road tripping together. You can catch a flight. Greyhound is still operating. Megabus is still operating. Throw on a mask and come on, because we honestly this is a pivotal moment in our country's history. And as we wrap things up here, I'm going to give Zillah a moment to give closing thoughts. And then from there on out, I will have the information for the event itself in the notes for this episode. Zillah?
Yes. Okay, cool. Thank you. And even come the day before, because we're having a community dinner with the whole with a lot of DC community and a lot of people of faith. Also, we're doing a memorial service for all the people that we died, almost 1 million people from COVID-19, and also this jacked up healthcare system. We'll be honoring all of them because, the reality is that and this goes with like your greed thing, is like greed and money is pushed upon us on so many ways. And like the reality is like half of us don't have boots, the other ones don't have straps. So we can't pull anything up if we're doing that. Like credit card debt is up 45%. So like let's make that make sense, and like the reality is if we fight together for money, if we fight together for, and even like the whole COVID CDC thing, like if we don't work for 5 days, it showed how people could really shut down this country if we really wanted to and work together. And that's some of the stuff that we really have to start unlearning within ourselves and really stop treating each other like we're expendable, because we're not. Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren, for
completely. 1 second, I'll wrap up here. You just finished this episode of Unbossed, Unbothered, and Unfiltered. If you're looking for the show, you can find us at unbossedunbotheredandunfiltered.com and also on Facebook and Instagram. And if you're looking for me, you can find me at Lauren Zayu on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for joining us.